Now the front teeth should be like that at the age of 5, because of course the permanent teeth are substantially larger and need the extra space. In some cases had continued to widen after the expansion was completed. It depended on whether the patient kept their tongue on the palate. If they did, then the expansion would not relapse. A very practical expansion appliance. I could improve it, adding shelves to each side so that when you expand the maxilla, the lower teeth are still supported. Remember, the maxilla has a suture down the middle of it so that it can widen. The mandible is a solid bit of bone, so it can't widen. If you wish to widen the mandible, you have to wait for the posture to gently widen it, and it can take a year or two. In this new design that I created, I put a shelf each side, as I say, but I also left the front of the appliance open so that the tongue could press up on the palate where it should be, because I realized that that was important. Now, that required me to put a wire behind the upper front teeth so that all the rest of the area was open. And I found that if I gently pushed the wire forwards, I could move the upper front teeth forward. Now, this is important because when you widen a maxilla, you gain 1 millimeter of extra space for each millimeter you widen. But when you lengthen the maxilla, you gain 2 millimeters of space each side, as for every 1 millimeter you push the upper incisors forward. Now, subsequently, the upper incisors need to upright, and they will do that automatically if the patient keeps their tongue on their palate and their lips together. I also found that the rate of expansion was very important. The teeth, as you know, are set in the bone, and around them is the periodontal membrane. Now, the periodontal membrane is not much more than a hair's breadth. And so it's very easy, if you push too hard, to squash the tooth into the bone at its side. And this means there's no blood supply to the periodontal membrane in the area of the tooth, which is touching the side of the bone. Now, if it remains in this state for even a matter of hours, the cells in the periodontal membrane will die because they have no oxygen. And therefore the rate of movement is very crucial. And so I, having done some research on the ideal rate of growth of tissue in general, decided that the actual rate of growth should not be more than, that is, half a hair's breadth a day. That is very little. And so I discovered that if I opened the appliance 1/8 of a millimeter each day, then on each side that represented 1/16 of a millimeter, which is less than a hair's breadth. Therefore, by opening at that rate, I cause no damage and indeed no discomfort. That was how I created what I now call the BioBlock Stage 1 Expansion Appliance. I think to this day it is the best of all the expansion appliances. My Stage 1 BioBlock, which I expand at the semi-rapid rate of 1/16 of a millimeter a day, will not cause damage. And what happens to the suture, which is actually locked like that, physically locked, as you push at that very gentle rate, the salt is removed from the bone so that the bone goes soft, and then the two halves of the maxilla just gently separate. And as they move apart, new bone is formed in the middle. It goes so gently that the bone has time to follow, and you never get that black space which fills in with scar tissue, which needs to be organized. And usually after that, the central suture is never fully repaired and is unable to respond as it should. The maxilla is surrounded by lots of different sutures, all of which are intended to allow it to grow and to move. And if you move it at this very gentle, semi-rapid rate, it has time to reshape itself and move forward without any damage at any point. And I can only say that I strongly disapprove of appliances like MSE and the MARP, both of which tend to use surgery and also considerable force, as this causes real damage. If you can expand it at this gentle rate of, I call semi-rapid expansion, not only does the maxilla widen, that improves the cheeks, as you can see from these slides, but also it moves the whole maxilla forward. Not very much, maybe 2, perhaps 3 millimeters, but you can increase that if you do other things as well. But I just wanted to point out to you that there are many choices for expansion, but I have shown quite clearly that if you use the BioBlock semi-rapid expansion, you can expand adult maxillae at almost any age, certainly by 5, often to 10 millimeters of additional width. And I personally don't think anyone should ever expand in any other manner, because the correct expansion of the maxilla is very important.